The Uber driver gave Chen a curious look in the rearview mirror as they pulled into the familiar driveway of 42 Maple Street. "You sure this is the right address, miss? House looks pretty dark." Maya's stomach tightened as she stared at her childhood home through the car window. Every window was black, no warm glow from the living room lamp her mother always left on, no Christmas lights strung along the porch railings like every December since she could remember. The house looked abandoned. "Yeah, this is it," she said, though her voice wavered with uncertainty. "Maybe they're just out." But as the driver helped her pull her suitcases from the trunk, Maya's eyes fell on something that made her blood freeze. There, lined up along the porch like some grotesque welcome committee, were 6 black garbage bags. Her heart hammered as she approached the first one, recognizing the corner of her old teddy bear poking through a tear in the plastic. Her hands shook as she fumbled for her house key, but it wouldn't turn. The locks had been changed. A folded piece of paper was taped to the front door, her name written across it in her mother's familiar handwriting. Maya tore it free with trembling fingers. "Maya, after much consideration, Richard and I have decided that you are no longer welcome in this house. Your behavior at college has been completely unacceptable, and we will not continue to enable your reckless choices. Your belongings are on the porch. Do not contact us again. Linda, not Mom. Not love, Mom. Just Linda." Maya read the note 3 times before the words truly sank in. Her legs gave out and she collapsed onto the porch steps, the paper fluttering from her numb fingers. This was impossible. Just 2 months ago, her mother had called her crying with joy about Maya's internship offer at Google. They'd talked for hours about her future, about graduate school, about everything. What behavior, what reckless choices. Maya had spent her entire senior year buried in textbooks and code, maintaining her 3.9 GPA while working part-time to help with expenses. Her biggest rebellion had been staying up until 2 a.m. debugging programs. But there it was, in black ink, her mother had chosen Richard over her own daughter. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her roommate Sarah. "Safe flight, say hi to your mom for me." She stared at the message, then at the garbage bags containing the remnants of her childhood. Her computer science textbooks, the photo albums her mother had meticulously maintained, the quilt her grandmother had made, all of it deemed trash, literally put out with the garbage. The December wind cut through her jacket as she sat alone on the porch of the house where she'd taken her first steps, lost her first tooth, and cried in her mother's arms when her father died. Now that same mother had locked her out like a stranger. Richard had won. Somehow, in the space of 1 semester, her stepfather had convinced her mother to abandon the daughter she'd raised alone for 15 years. The man who'd entered their lives 3 years ago with his charming smile and promises of taking care of both his girls, had systematically erased Maya from her own family. As snow began to fall, Maya sat surrounded by garbage bags full of her discarded life, finally understanding that she was truly alone in the world. The injustice of it burned in her chest, not just the abandonment, but the lies that must have been told to justify it. Her mother, the woman who'd once said Maya was her whole world, had chosen to believe a man she'd known for 3 years over the daughter she'd loved for 21. The betrayal was complete, and it was only the beginning. Maya spent her first night in a cheap motel room, surrounded by the contents of those garbage bags spread across the scratchy carpet. She'd salvaged what she could carry, leaving behind furniture and childhood mementos that wouldn't fit in her arm. Now, as she sat cross-legged among the debris of her former life, she began to piece together a puzzle she hadn't even known existed. Her laptop, thankfully still functional despite being tossed in a bag like garbage, became her lifeline. Maya pulled up her call log, scrolling back through months of conversations with her mother. The calls had been getting shorter, she realized now, more distant. Her mother's responses had become clipped, distracted. Maya had attributed it to wedding planning stress. Richard and her mother were supposed to marry in the spring, but now she saw a pattern she'd missed before. Maya opened Facebook, something she rarely did anymore, and navigated to her mother's profile. Her heart sank as she scrolled through recent posts. Photo after photo of Linda and Richard at restaurants, on weekend trips, at social gatherings. In every image, her mother looked happy but somehow smaller, more subdued than Maya remembered. And notably absent from every single photo or mention was any reference to Maya herself. It was as if she'd been systematically erased from her mother's life months ago. Her phone buzzed, a text from Jake Morrison, her old high school friend who still lived in town. Heard you were coffee tomorrow. Maya stared at the message. Jake had heard she was back. From who? She called him immediately. Maya, how's the prodigal daughter? Jake's voice was warm but carried an odd undertone. Jake, who told you I was back in town? Your mom mentioned it to my mom at the grocery store last week. Said you were coming home for the holidays but that things were complicated between you two. Maya's grip tightened on the phone. Complicated? Look, I don't want to get in the middle of family drama, but she seemed pretty upset. Said you'd been giving her and Richard a hard time about money, that you were angry about them getting married. My mom felt really bad for her. The room spun around Jake, I've never said a word against their marriage. I've been supportive from the beginning. A long pause. That's not what she told people, Maya. She said you've been calling drunk, demanding money, threatening to drop out of school if they didn't pay for everything. Richard apparently had to start screening her calls because you were getting so aggressive. Maya's blood turned to ice. I have never called drunk in my life, and I work part-time to help pay for school. Jake, I think someone's been lying to my mother about me. After hanging up, Maya sat in stunned silence. The picture was becoming horrifyingly clear. Richard hadn't just convinced her mother to abandon her. He'd been systematically poisoning their relationship for months, maybe long. Every conversation Maya thought she'd had with her mother might have been filtered through Richard's lies. Every missed call might have been explained away as Maya being difficult again. But why? Maya opened her laptop and began doing what she did best, digging through data. She started with Richard's social media profiles, his employment history, anything she could find online. What she discovered made her stomach churn. Richard Morrison, not his real last name, she discovered had a history. 3 previous marriages, each ending in messy divorces, involving allegations of gambling and financial misconduct. A bankruptcy filing from 5 years ago, a restraining order from his second wife citing emotional manipulation and financial abuse. Maya's hands flew across the keyboard, her computer science skills finally put to use for something personal. She hacked into her mother's email account, something she'd never done before but felt justified doing now. The password was still Maya's birthday, which somehow made everything worse. The emails told a story that made Maya's blood boil. Months of messages from Richard to her mother, each one carefully crafted to poison Linda's perception of her daughter. Screenshots of fake text messages supposedly from Maya, filled with hateful language Maya had never used. Evidence of Maya's supposed drinking problem, including photos that were clearly doctored. Financial records showing Maya's school expenses, but manipulated to make them look excessive and unreasonable. And then Maya found the smoking gun. Buried deep in her mother's email was a correspondence with the bank managing her father's life insurance policy, the college fund that was supposed to be untouchable until Maya graduated. Richard had somehow convinced her mother to make him a co-signatory on the account for Maya's own good, claiming they needed to monitor her spending. The recent statements showed withdrawals, lots of them. Money that was supposed to fund Maya's final semester in graduate school was gone, transferred to accounts in Richard's name. Her inheritance from her father, the man who died when she was 15 and left everything to ensure his daughter's future, had been stolen. Maya stared at the screen, her reflection ghost-like in the blue glow. This wasn't just about a man turning a mother against her daughter. This was about a con artist who'd identified a vulnerable widow, gained her trust, isolated her from her support system, and then systematically robbed her blind while making the daughter look like the villain. Her mother wasn't just a willing participant in Maya's abandonment, she was Richard's victim too. But that realization, instead of softening Maya's anger, crystallized it into something harder and more dangerous. Richard had stolen her family, her home, her inheritance, and her future. He'd turned the woman who'd raised her into a weapon against her. Maya closed the laptop and looked around the motel room at her scattered belongings. She was no longer the hurt, confused girl who'd been thrown away like garbage. She was a senior computer science major with a 3.9 GPA, coding skills that could make Fortune 500 companies weep, and now she had a very clear understanding of exactly who had wronged her and how. Richard Morrison thought he was dealing with a naive college girl. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Maya spent the next 3 days transforming her cramped motel room into a war room. Her laptop never closed, takeout containers stacked like building blocks around her makeshift desk. She'd called in sick to her winter break retail job, a luxury she could afford now that she understood the stakes involved. The plan crystallized in her mind like code compiling, elegant, systematic, and devastating. Phase 1 would be evidence gathering. Maya needed irrefutable proof of Richard's crimes, not just the financial theft, but the entire pattern of manipulation. She created a secure partition on her laptop, encrypted everything, and began building what she privately called the Richard file. Her first breakthrough came when she managed to access Richard's email through a phishing attack so simple it was almost insulting. The man who'd convinced her mother that Maya was reckless and irresponsible used password 123 for his Gmail account. What she found inside made her hands shake with rage. Richard had been methodical in his destruction of Maya's relationship with her mother. Email drafts showed him crafting fake text conversations, editing photos to make Maya look drunk or wild, even researching college party culture to make his lies more believable. But worse were the emails to his gambling buddies, bragging about his inheritance windfall and his stupid wife who signs whatever I put in front of her. Maya screenshotted everything, but she knew raw evidence wouldn't be enough. Her mother was emotionally invested in Richard now. Linda would rationalize anything Maya showed her as doctored or taken out of context. Maya needed to be smarter than that. Phase 2 was psychological warfare. Maya created a series of anonymous email accounts and began a careful campaign of information distribution. She started small, sending her mother helpful articles about financial scams targeting widows, always from concerned friends who'd seen the articles and thought of Linda. She sent similar warnings to Linda's sister Carol, who'd never liked Richard but had stopped voicing her concerns after Linda defended him too aggressively. The key was patience. Maya couldn't seem like the source of the information, and she couldn't overwhelm her mother all at once. Instead, she planted seeds of doubt that would grow organically. Meanwhile, Maya began documenting Richard's current activities. She installed tracking software on his devices when he left them unattended at the coffee shop where he spent his afternoons. She'd learned his routine by following him for 2 days. The software revealed his online gambling addiction in horrifying detail. Richard was losing hundreds of dollars daily on fantasy sports and poker sites, using her college fund as his personal ATM. But Maya's most devastating discovery came when she hacked into the mortgage company's record. Richard had been forging Linda's signature on documents, preparing to take out a second mortgage on the house that had been paid off when Maya's father died, their one source of financial security. Her mother was weeks away from financial ruin and didn't even know it. Phase 3 required Maya to get closer to home. She rented a small apartment across town using money from her emergency fund, telling the landlord she was a graduate student. The place was barely more than a studio, but it had high-speed internet and was close enough to her old neighborhood for surveillance. Maya began showing up at places her mother frequented: the grocery store, the library, the small cafe where Linda met her book club. She never approached directly, but she made sure Linda saw her. The goal was to plant the idea that Maya was nearby, not threatening or demanding, just present. The first encounter happened at the grocery store. Maya was in the cereal aisle when she heard her mother's laugh from the next row over. Her heart hammered as she pushed her cart around the corner, making it look accidental. Maya, Linda's voice was shocked, uncertain. Hi, Mom. Maya kept her voice gentle, non-confrontational. She looked at her mother, really looked, and was shocked by what she saw. Linda had lost weight, her clothes hanging loose on her frame. Dark circles shadowed her eyes and her hands trembled slightly as she gripped her shopping cart. Richard said. Linda started, then stopped, confusion clouding her features. I know what Richard said. Maya's voice remained calm, but I'm still your daughter and I still love you. I just want you to be safe and happy. Before Linda could respond, Maya walked away, leaving her mother staring after her in bewilderment. That night, Maya intercepted Richard's emails to see his reaction. He was furious, firing off messages to Linda about Maya stalking them and becoming unhinged. But Maya noticed something crucial in his panicked response. He was working overtime to explain away Maya's calm, loving demeanor. The more rational Maya appeared, the more Richard's stories about her being unstable began to crack. Maya began leaving gifts, not at the house that would seem threatening, but at places her mother would find them. A book Linda had mentioned wanting to read, left on her favorite library table with a note. Thought you'd enjoy this. Love always. Flowers delivered to her mother's workplace with a card, thinking of you. Each gift was innocent, loving, and completely at odds with Richard's portrayal of Maya as vindictive and cruel. But Maya's masterstroke was technological. She'd been monitoring Richard's devices and knew he was planning something big. A final theft that would empty Linda's remaining accounts and leave her destitute. He'd already booked a one-way flight to Las Vegas for the following month, planning to disappear with everything while Linda thought he was at a work conference. Maya couldn't let that happen. She began preparing the final phase of her plan, knowing it would require perfect timing and absolute precision. Richard had spent months destroying her relationship with her mother through lies and manipulation. Maya was going to destroy him with the truth. But as she sat in her tiny apartment, surrounded by evidence of Richard's crimes and her own carefully laid plans, Maya found herself wrestling with an unexpected emotion: guilt. She was about to unleash a devastating attack that would destroy a man's life and shatter her mother's world in the process. Was revenge worth the collateral damage? Maya looked at the photo on her desk. Her mother, and her father at her high school graduation, all three of them laughing at something ridiculous. Her dad had said, her father who'd worked double shifts to save money for her college fund, her mother who'd held Maya through every nightmare after his death, promising they'd always have each other. Richard had stolen all of that. He'd taken a grieving family's love and trust and weaponized it for his own greed. Maya closed her laptop and began preparing for war. Richard's first sign that something was wrong came when Linda started asking questions. "Why didn't you tell me Maya was working part-time at school?" she asked over dinner, her voice carefully neutral. Richard's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Because she's been partying with that money you send her, but Carol saw her at the grocery store last week. She looked thin, tired, like she's been working too hard." "Carol's always been jealous of our relationship," Richard said smoothly, but Maya could see the tension in his shoulders through the dining room window. She'd been watching from across the street, documenting his reactions to her mother's growing doubt. The questions multiplied over the following days. Linda mentioned the book that had appeared at the library, the flowers at her office, the way Maya had seemed genuinely concerned about her well-being. Each time Richard's explanations grew more elaborate, more desperate. "She's trying to manipulate you," he insisted, pacing the living room while Maya recorded through the window with her telephoto lens. "It's classic behavior for someone with her problems. They love bomb you, then they strike when you're vulnerable." But Maya had been careful. Every interaction with her mother had been gentle, loving, asking for nothing. It was becoming impossible for Richard to paint her as the villain when she wasn't acting like one. That's when Richard decided to escalate. Maya first noticed the surveillance when she spotted the same gray sedan parked outside her apartment building 3 days in a row. Richard had hired a private investigator, a sloppy one who didn't know the first thing about digital operational security. Maya hacked his email within hours and discovered Richard's true desperation. The PI's reports painted a picture of Maya as a model citizen, working part-time, studying constantly, living frugally in a tiny apartment. But Richard was paying him to find dirt, any dirt that could be used to discredit her. "Keep digging," Richard wrote in one email. "There has to be something: drug use, sexual behavior, anything. I need ammunition." Maya realized she'd backed Richard into a corner, and cornered animals were dangerous. The first direct attack came through social media. Richard created fake profiles and began posting evidence of Maya's supposed wild behavior at college. Photos of other girls at parties, labeled as Maya. Fake screenshots of text conversations where Maya demanded money and threatened her mother. The posts were tagged with Linda's friends and family members, designed to humiliate Maya and reinforce Richard's narrative. But Maya had been preparing for this. She'd spent weeks documenting Richard's devices, his email accounts, his patterns of behavior. When the fake posts appeared, she was ready with a counterattack. Within hours, she'd traced the posts back to Richard's devices and created a comprehensive digital trail showing the fabrication. She anonymously sent this evidence to Linda's sister Carol, who immediately called Linda. "This is insane," Carol said, her voice carrying through the phone. Maya had learned to tap. "These posts are fake, Linda. Look at the metadata. They were all created from the same IP address, your house." "Richard wouldn't," Linda started, but her voice lacked conviction. "Richard would," Carol said firmly. "He's been lying to you for months. Maya's been trying to tell you the truth, and you chose to believe a man you've known for 3 years over the daughter you raised." The phone call ended badly, with Linda hanging up in tears. But Maya could see the cracks in Richard's facade widening. That night, Richard made his biggest mistake. Desperate to regain control, he decided to force a confrontation. He called Maya's apartment, his voice slurred with alcohol. "You little bitch," he snarled. "You think you're so smart, playing games with me. I've destroyed stronger people than you." Maya recorded every word. "I know what you're doing," Richard continued, his careful mask completely slipped. "Following me, watching the house, turning Linda against me. But you have no idea who you're dealing with. I've taken everything from you once, and I'll do it again." "Is that a threat, Richard?" It's a promise. By the time I'm done with you, your mother won't just hate you, she'll be afraid of you. And when she needs protection from her dangerous daughter, guess who'll be there to provide it?" The call ended, but Maya had everything she needed. Richard's own voice, clearly threatening her, admitting to his manipulation, revealing his true nature. But Richard wasn't finished. The next morning, Linda received a call from the police. Someone had filed a report claiming Maya was stalking her mother, harassment, making threats. The caller, who'd refused to give his name, provided Maya's address and detailed descriptions of her threatening behavior. Maya found herself at the police station, facing Detective Rodriguez across a small table. "Miss Chen, we've received reports that you've been harassing your mother and stepfather," Rodriguez said, his voice professional but not unkind. "That's not true," Maya said calmly. She'd prepared for this too, but I can prove it. She placed a flash drive on the table. "Everything's on there. The real harassment, the financial theft, the systematic manipulation. My stepfather has been stealing from my college fund and turning my mother against me. When I started exposing the truth, he escalated to false police reports." Rodriguez looked skeptical until he plugged in the drive. Maya watched his expression change as he scrolled through the evidence. Richard's emails, the fake social media posts, the financial records, the recorded phone call. "Jesus," he muttered, This is extensive. I'm a computer science major," Maya said simply. "I'm good at finding the truth." The detective looked at her for a long moment. "Miss Chen, I have to ask, what's your endgame here? What do you want to happen?" Maya met his gaze steadily. "I want my mother to be safe. I want the money my father left for my education returned. And I want Richard Morrison to face consequences for his crimes. And if I told you that some of these methods you used to gather evidence might not be admissible in court," Maya smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes, "then I guess it's a good thing I have other plans." That evening, Maya sat in her apartment, watching Richard pace frantically in his living room through her telephoto lens. The police visit had shaken him. He was making phone calls, checking his email obsessively, realizing that his carefully constructed web of lies was unraveling. But Maya wasn't finished. She'd been patient, methodical, building her case piece by piece. Now it was time for the final phase. Richard had started this war by turning her mother against her, stealing her inheritance and destroying her family. Maya was going to end it by giving him exactly what he deserved, the truth, delivered with surgical precision, in front of the one person whose opinion mattered most. Her mother was about to learn exactly who Richard Morrison really was, and Maya was going to make sure she had a front row seat for his destruction. Maya chose her moment with the precision of a surgeon making the first incision. It was a Thursday evening, exactly 3 weeks before Richard's planned flight to Las Vegas. Maya had been monitoring his communications and knew he was preparing for the final theft, planning to clean out Linda's remaining accounts while she attended her book club meeting. But Maya had sent an anonymous tip to the book club leader, canceling the meeting due to a family emergency. Linda would be home. Richard would be caught in the act, and Maya would be there to ensure the truth finally came to light. Maya positioned herself across the street from her childhood home, her laptop connected to the wireless network she'd installed months ago to monitor Richard's activities. At exactly 7:30 p.m., she watched Richard sit down at Linda's computer in the home office. The same desk where Maya had done homework as a child, where her father had paid bills and planned for their future. On her screen, Maya watched Richard log into Linda's banking accounts, preparing to transfer everything to his hidden accounts. His fingers moved confidently across the keyboard, a predator so certain of his safety that he'd grown careless. That's when Maya struck. The first sign of trouble was when Richard's transfer was declined. Then another. Maya had spent weeks learning the bank's security protocols, and she'd flagged Richard's accounts for suspicious activity. Every attempted transfer would trigger a fraud alert. Richard's confident expression shifted to confusion, then panic as he tried repeatedly to access the money. Maya watched him grab his phone, calling his contact at the bank, his voice rising with each failed attempt to explain why he needed immediate access to his wife's account. "What do you mean the accounts are frozen?" Richard's voice carried through the window Maya had left slightly open. "I'm her husband. I have power of attorney. But Maya had done her homework. Richard's power of attorney documents were forgeries. Sophisticated ones, but forgeries nonetheless. The bank's fraud department was already investigating. Maya gave Richard exactly 10 minutes to panic before she made her entrance. She walked up to the front door and rang the bell, her heart hammering but her expression calm. When Linda answered, Maya saw the shock and confusion in her mother's eyes, the same look she'd worn at the grocery store, as if she was seeing a ghost. "Hi Mom," Maya said gently. "I think we need to talk." "Maya, this isn't a good time," Linda started, but her voice lacked conviction. Behind her, Maya could hear Richard cursing at the computer. "Actually, it's the perfect time," Maya said, "because right now Richard is in your office trying to steal the last of your money so he can disappear to Las Vegas and leave you with nothing." Linda's face went white. He wouldn't." "Linda," Richard's voice boomed from the office. "Linda, get in here. Something's wrong with the computer." Maya met her mother's eyes. "Ask him about the flight he booked. Ask him about the gambling debts. Ask him about my college fund." For a moment, mother and daughter stood on the threshold, 21 years of love and 3 years of lies hanging in the balance. Then Linda stepped aside, allowing Maya into the house for the first time since that devastating night 3 weeks ago. They found Richard frantically typing at the computer, his hair disheveled, sweat staining his shirt. When he saw Maya, his face contorted with rage. "You," he snarled, rising from the chair. "What did you do?" "I stopped you," Maya said simply. She pulled out her phone and began playing the recording of Richard's drunken threat. His own voice filled the room, slurred and vicious. "I've destroyed stronger people than you. I've taken everything from you once, and I'll do it again." Linda sank into a chair, her hand pressed to her mouth. "That's taken out of context," Richard said desperately. "She provoked me, she's been stalking us, harassing." "Like this harassment?" Maya pulled up the fake social media posts on her laptop, then showed the metadata proving they'd been created from this very computer. "Or this harassment?" She played recordings of Richard coaching the private investigator to fabricate evidence against her. Each piece of evidence hit Linda like a physical blow. Maya watched her mother's face cycle through disbelief, recognition and finally devastating clarity. "The book club," Linda whispered. "You canceled my book club so you could." She looked at Richard with dawning horror. "You were going to steal my money while I was gone." "It's not stealing." Richard exploded. "We're married. What's yours is mine." "We're not married yet," Linda said quietly, "and now we never will be." That's when Richard's mask finally completely shattered. "You stupid bitch," he snarled at Linda. "Do you have any idea what I've done for you? You were pathetic when I found you. A grieving widow with no idea how to live without her precious husband. I gave you purpose, direction, someone to take care of you." Maya watched her mother flinch as if she'd been slapped. "I turned you against your ungrateful daughter because she was bleeding you dry." Richard continued, his voice rising to a shout. "Everything I did was to protect you from her manipulation." "By manipulating her yourself?" Maya's voice cut through his tirade like ice. "By stealing from her dead father's insurance policy? By forging documents and lying to banks?" Richard whirled on her. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Little computer genius, playing detective, but you have no idea what you've cost me." "I had debts, obligations, gambling debts," Maya said. "From your addiction that you hid from my mother, money you stole from my education to feed your addiction." "Maya," Linda's voice was barely a whisper. She was looking at bank statements Maya had printed out, showing the systematic theft of Maya's college fund. "Your father's insurance money, it's all gone." "Not all," Maya said. "I managed to stop the final transfers, but most of it, yes. He stole it to gamble." Linda looked up at Richard, and Maya saw something break behind her mother's eyes. "You knew how much that money meant to her. You knew it was all she had left of her father. You knew and you stole it anyway." "I was going to pay it back," Richard protested. "When my investments paid off, when I hit it big, I would have replaced every penny." "With what?" Maya pulled up Richard's financial records on her laptop. "Your salary that you've been lying about? The promotion that doesn't exist? The investment portfolio that's actually a mountain of debt?" The room fell silent except for the sound of Linda's quiet sobbing. Maya felt her anger transforming into something else. Not satisfaction, but a deep, abiding sadness for all the pain that could have been avoided. "Mom," she said softly, kneeling beside Linda's chair, "I'm so sorry." I tried to tell you, but I chose him over you, Linda whispered. My own daughter, I chose a liar over my own child. Richard made one last desperate play. Linda, you can't listen to her, she's manipulated all of this evidence, she's dangerous, unstable, look what she's done to us. But Maya had one final card to play. She pulled up the recording from the bank, the one where Richard tried to access Linda's accounts using forged documents. His voice calm and calculating, explaining to the bank representative why he needed to help his wife manage her finances while she was dealing with mental health issues. He told them you were mentally incompetent, Maya said quietly, so he could steal everything without your knowledge. Linda's sobs stopped. She looked up at Richard with an expression Maya had never seen before, not anger, not hurt, but something cold and final. Get out, Linda said. Linda, let me explain. Get out. The force of Linda's scream made both Maya and Richard step back. Get out of my house. Get out of my life. And if you ever come near my daughter again, I will destroy you. Richard looked between the two women, his face cycling through rage, desperation, and finally defeat. He grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair and headed for the door. This isn't over, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Yes, it is, Maya said. She held up her phone, showing the recording app that had been running the entire time. Everything you just said is documented. The police are already investigating your fraud. You have about 12 hours before they issue a warrant. Richard's face went gray. Without another word, he walked out of the house, slamming the door behind him. For a long moment, Maya and her mother sat in silence. Then Linda reached out with trembling fingers and touched Maya's face. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Maya covered her mother's hand with her own. I know, but we're going to be okay. We're going to fix this. Outside, they could hear Richard's car speeding away into the night, carrying with him the wreckage of his carefully constructed lot. But inside the house on Maple Street, a mother and daughter began the slow process of rebuilding what had been broken. The war was over, the truth had won. 6 months later, Maya sat in the courthouse gallery, watching Richard Morrison, whose real name, they'd discovered, was Robert Mitchell, stand before Judge Harrison for sentencing. The man who'd once commanded her mother's living room with his charming smile, now looked diminished in his orange jumpsuit, his shoulders hunched in defeat. Miss Mitchell, Judge Harrison said, reviewing the thick file before him, you have pleaded guilty to identity fraud, forgery, elder abuse, and theft of funds totaling $129. The court sentences you to 5 years in state prison, with mandatory restitution to your victim. Maya felt her mother's hand squeeze hers as the gavel fell. Justice, she thought, but the word felt heavier than she'd expected. Winning hadn't erased the months of pain or the trust that had been shattered. The bank had recovered most of Maya's college fund, though Richard's gambling spree had cost her nearly $30,000. It was enough to finish her degree, but graduate school would require loans and scholarships she'd never needed before. Still, as Maya watched the bailiff lead Richard away, she found she didn't care about the money as much as she'd thought she would. It's over, Linda whispered beside her, and Maya heard the exhaustion in her mother's voice. The rebuilding had been slow and sometimes painful. Maya had moved back into her childhood bedroom, but the house felt different now. Smaller somehow, with invisible scars marking where Richard's lies had lived. Mother and daughter moved around each other carefully at first, like survivors of the same accident learning to walk again. The hardest part wasn't forgiving her mother, the hardest part was learning to trust that Linda wouldn't choose someone else over her again. I keep thinking I should have known, Linda said one evening, as they sat on the porch where Maya's belongings had once been abandoned in garbage bags. The signs were all there. The way he isolated me from Carol, from you, the way he always had explanations for everything. He was good at what he did, Maya replied. That's why it worked. But even as she offered comfort, Maya struggled with her own guilt. The revenge she'd planned so meticulously had been satisfying in the moment, but in the aftermath, she found herself questioning whether there had been another way. Could she have saved her mother without destroying her world so completely? Martinez, the therapist they'd started seeing together, called it complicated grief, mourning not just what they'd lost, but what they'd lost faith in. Linda grieved the man she'd thought she loved. Maya grieved the innocence that had let her believe family bonds were unbreakable. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight, Dr. Martinez had told them. It's rebuilt in small moments, one conversation at a time. Those moments came gradually. Linda driving Maya back to school for her final semester, both of them crying as they pulled into the campus parking lot. Maya calling home every few days, not because she had to anymore, but because she wanted to. Linda sending care packages filled with homemade cookies and handwritten notes that said, "I love you and I'm proud of you," and sometimes just "I'm sorry." Maya graduated summa cum laude in May. Linda sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face, holding a sign that read, "That's my daughter," in rainbow letters. After the ceremony, as they posed for photos, Linda pulled Maya aside. "Your father would be so proud," she said, "and so am I. Not just of your grades or your job offer, but of who you've become. You could have destroyed me along with Richard, but you didn't. You saved me instead." Maya looked at her mother, really looked at her, and saw someone different from the woman who'd written that devastating note 6 months ago. Linda looked older, yes, but also stronger, more careful with her trust, but more deliberate in her love. "We saved each other," Maya said finally. The Google internship turned into a full-time offer, and Maya found herself moving to California with her mother's blessing and frequent FaceTime calls. Their relationship was different now, more honest, but also more fragile. They talked about everything and nothing, building new traditions to replace the ones Richard had poisoned. Sometimes Maya thought about Richard in his prison cell, and wondered if he understood what he'd really stolen. Not just money or time, but the easy, unquestioned love between a mother and daughter. That particular innocence could never be fully restored, but as Maya settled into her new apartment, hanging photos of her and Linda from graduation day, she realized something had been gained too. They knew now what their love could survive. They'd tested it against lies and manipulation and betrayal, and while it had bent nearly to breaking, it had held. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her mother, "Proud of you every day. Call when you can. Love, Mom." Not Linda. Maya smiled and typed back, "Love you too, always." Outside her window, the California sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of forgiveness and new beginnings. The war was over, the truth had won, and sometimes, just sometimes, that was enough.